And while I'm only half Indian and I have experienced white passing privilege, I'm here today to say that it is time we use our white privilege for good and educate ourselves. And that is why I will be sharing a piece of The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And I urge you to read this book and read other texts. Here we go. What has changed since the collapse of Jim Crow has less to do with the basic structure of our society than with the language we use to justify it. In the era of colorblindness, it is no longer socially permissible to use race explicitly as a justification for discrimination, exclusion, and social contempt. So we don't. Rather than rely on race, we use our criminal justice system to label people of color criminals and then engage in all the practices we supposedly left behind. Today, it is perfectly legal to discriminate against criminals in nearly all the ways it was once legal to discriminate against African Americans. Once you're labeled a felon, the old forms of discrimination, employment discrimination, housing discrimination, denial of the right to vote, denial of educational opportunity, denial of food stamps and other public benefits, and exclusion from jury service are suddenly legal. As a criminal, you have scarcely more rights and arguably less respect than a black man living in Alabama at the height of Jim Crow. We have not ended racial castes in America, we have merely redesigned it. I reached the conclusions presented in this book reluctantly. 10 years ago, I would have argued strenuously against the central claim made here. Namely, that something akin to a racial caste system currently exists in the United States. Indeed, if Barack Obama had been elected president back then, I would have argued that his election marked the nation's triumph over racial caste, the final nail in the coffin of Jim Crow. My elation would have been tempered by the distance yet to be traveled to reach the promised land of racial justice in America. But my conviction that nothing remotely similar to Jim Crow exists in this country would have been steadfast. Today, my elation over Obama's election is tempered by a far more sobering awareness. As an African American woman with 3 young children who will never know a world in which a black man could not be president of the United States, I was beyond thrilled on election night. Yet when I walked out of the election night party full of hope and enthusiasm, I was immediately reminded of the harsh realities of the new Jim Crow. A black man was on his knees in the gutter, hands cuffed behind his back as several police officers stood around him, talking, joking, and ignoring his human existence. People poured out of the building, many stared for a moment at the black man cowering in the street, and then averted their gaze. What did the election of Barack Obama mean for him? Thank you.